with the 67 Camaro again. We're blocked. It's been all epoxy. Doors have been epoxy, fenders and everything. So now we're blocking the epoxy so we can find our high and low spots. So we got a couple low spots up here on the top of the quarter. And make sure you use a dust mask. We've got our big kid blocks here. So here we go. Alright, make sure you have those cross hatches and you'll be all set. A customer came in and finished putting his roll bar in last Friday. We got sidebars. So what our next thing is to do here, we're going to smooth out this firewall. We're going to take this piece off and weld that up. And we got some holes to weld up here. And then we're going to body work this. Make that all nice and smooth. So I taped some paper on that side. That's that hard cardboard type of paper. Taped that, then went inside. I marked it from the inside, and then we'll cut that and then transfer it onto some sheet metal. Okay, so here's the patch. It's just set in there right now. We're going to tack it in. And this is a little bit long on this side, so we'll tack it up on the top, tack it up on the bottom, and cut that line to make so we can butt it up flush. And we got to do a little reaming in there to get that right. But so far so good. Okay, we're almost ready to do some fiberglassing. That's all welded up in there. And ready to get fiberglass. We're going to have to take that off and the steering column out before we can finish up over there, but we're going to start over here. Okay, after welding everything up and grinding it, my next step is to put fiberglass on it, and then we'll sand that down and epoxy the firewall. I got to take this piece off and a bunch of that stuff. We're going to take that off to finish the firewall, and we'll sand it down and epoxy it and get it ready for body work. So we have one more hole to fill in. There was a hole here, and there was an indent over here and another hole over here. I forget what that was for, but he wants those covered up. So we're going to cover those up and do some fiberglass and body work there. We got that seam all fiberglassed and ready for body work. The rest of it's all done. It's almost ready for primer. We should hopefully get that done by the end of today. Just got a little scuffing to do here and there. We'll do a light coat of epoxy and then prime it. Okay, we got all that welded in and ground. Made that nice and smooth. Do a little bit of fiberglass work. It's just a skim coat, and then skim coat it with body filler. And that should be just about ready for primer as soon as we finish sanding that right there. Okay, we got all the welding done, the grinding done, fiberglass work, and body work done. So now we just gotta tape it up and prime it. Alright, it's all taped up, ready for some primer. We're even gonna do the top of the dash. Cowl sides. We'll get that done today. Not only did we get the firewall finished body worked and primed today, we also started working on the roof body work, and the sail panel body work, and some of the quarter panel. Quarter panels are actually pretty decent. This one here doesn't even, it might need some down there, and a little bit down there, but the top of it looks pretty good. But we're going to skim coat the whole top and then hit it with the longboard, airboard, after we knock it down with the DA. Just get those ridges out so we can get the back half of the car primed up eventually. And now we're working on the bodywork to the roof. As you can see, it's a skim coat around the whole roof because it was pretty hammered. So we're skim coated that. It's all sanded with 120. We'll probably go over it again with 180 real quick, and we're going to finish up the sail panels. We got a little bit there, same thing on the other side. Had one dent there, we're going to put a little bit more on that dent there. There's that side. There's a pretty big wiggle in there. And we're going to finish up that sail panel. And then we got to form these edges. Because there's a little tiny lip in there. When you get a new quarter panel put on, that lip's not really pronounced like it is on the top up here. It does fade away down near the bottom here. But we want to try and get that in there. So that's going to take a little bit, and make sure all of those are really nice and smooth and straight. Then we got to do the A-pillars. So what I use to start the body work on the roof, see how you get these marks in here from your spreader. I'll use the 8-inch orbital with 80 grit on it. This is a fine throw, so it doesn't dig as much as the Mud Hog does. So I'll use that to knock these down first, and then I'll use my airboard with 80 and then 180 to get it the rest of the way. Got some pinholes here, so. And then once we're done with that, I'll go over the whole thing with a long block with 180 on it to finish it off, and then we'll prime it. Here are my tools for doing body work. I use the DA to knock off these edges. And once it gets to this position here, I'll start using some of my blocks. Sometimes I'll start with a Dura block, or my Hutchins block, or my Big Kid blocks, depending on what grit I'm using. Most likely I use a Dura block for 80 grit, and then 120 I'll go to the Big Kid blocks. And for final sanding, I'll use these. But obviously this one is made special for curves. So for in here, I'll use that for my curves, and I'll also use a flex block for in a spot like this, as opposed to trying to use, whether it's a Big Kid block, because it'll leave sharp edges. As you can see, it's pretty sharp. It's got a little corner on the end of there, so it'll leave a dig mark in it, is what I call it, or a deep scratch. So I'll either use one of those for the corners, or see how the paper goes over on this one. I'll use one of those blocks, or I'll use this one for the corners or the curves. So once it gets done with this part with 80, I'll go over it with 120, and then I'll check for pinholes. If I have any pinholes, I'll do another skim coat on it, and then go over it with 120 again, and then 180, and it should be ready for prime. Okay, so that roof bodywork's pretty much done. Had to fine tune this body line here. Got a spot there. Those spots are done. We also had to fine tune this body line here. So we'll get that pretty soon, and that roof will be ready for primer. We are blocking the trunk lid out, and we marked all the spots where there's dents in it. So we're going to actually spread filler on the whole trunk lid and then block it down. And hopefully all that's left are these areas here. And I leave these lines in here so when I see the line through the body filler, I know when to stop. Kind of just like this one here. You see that's where you got to stop. You just seen the line. So we're getting there. The quarters are in pretty decent shape. There's only a couple dents in it. Trunk lids are always this way. We'll put a skim coat on that, block it with a inline sander with 80 and then 120, and then we'll do it by hand with 180. Okay, so we're blocking this trunk lid. We've had a few dents in it here and there, so we skim coated the whole thing to make sure it's smooth because there were some waves in it. We're using the long Big Kids block with some 120 paper on it, and we're just going to keep sanding. Right now it feels pretty good. Already went over it with 80 grit with the long board, with the air board, and then we'll go over it with 120 with this block, just to get all those 80 scratches out, and then we'll end up priming it pretty soon. It's feeling pretty good. Stay tuned for more. Okay, the roof body work is done, quarter body work is done, trunk lid body work is done. Here's the other quarter. There's just a dent there and a couple dents there. We'll be taping that up for primer pretty soon. Okay, we got all the body work done to the quarter panels and the roof on the 67 Camaro. We also did the trunk lid. We got it primed up today, untaped it today. So next thing we got to do is we're going to put the fenders back on, and the hood, so we can body work the doors to the fenders and make sure the hood's right, and we'll get all that stuff body worked along with the header panel and the lower valance. Make sure everything lines up, and we can finish doing the body work and then start blocking it out for a reprime.